Greetings again, dear viewers. JLB is back. And I have a very special treat for all of you watching. I got to say, this is probably one of the most vague entries into the animation TV history books that I have ever seen. But regardless, it is historic because it is the very first color cartoon series made for television. You heard me right. This is the first cartoon to broadcast in full color. So without further ado, let's get started with this episode. The topic, Colonel Bleep. Now, here's the summary of the whole thing, but before I get into that, let's get into its creation. You see, the show was created by Fran Nowak, written by Robert D. Buchanan, and animated by Songdak of Miami. Now, of course, there are some sources that say Joseph Barbera. Yes, that Joseph Barbera from Hanna-Barbera. Some sources say that he had a hand in the creation of Colonel Bleep, although his contribution was short-lived before he rejoined William Hanna to form, well, Hanna-Barbera, and the rest is history with that. Now, the show was originally syndicated in 1957 as a segment on Uncle Bill's TV Club, with 104 episodes of varying length, between 3 to 6 minutes each. And of these episodes, slightly fewer than half are known to survive today. Now, basically, here's the plot of the whole story of Colonel Bleep. It all starts in 1945, with the atomic bombs dropping on Hiroshima and Nagasaki. They were noticed by two figures: a caveman named Scratch, from a vague prehistoric era, who had been asleep since the last Stone Age and was awakened by the bombings, as well as the denizens of the exoplanet Futura. The Futurans, an alien race with heads shaped like Rulu triangles and small, slender bodies, send out one of their own, Colonel Bleep, hence the name of the show, to investigate the bombs. Upon reaching Earth, Bleep commissioned Scratch as his deputy, with Bleep representing the future and Scratch representing the past. Sort of like in that episode of SpongeBob SquarePants called SpongeBob BC, with Cavey the caveman that Patsy the pirate, well, thought out, and the robot that Polly the parrot, no, not Polly, Potty the parrot, I think that's his name, but anyway, it's sort of like SpongeBob BC before cartoons. Now, representing the present day was Squeak, a cowboy puppet toy that can move on its own volition? Yeah, I think that's volition. However, he cannot speak because, well, he's a puppet, and you can't have a puppet speak on its own without someone controlling it with their hand. Now, together, these three established their base at 00 Island in the Atlantic Ocean to protect the Earth's solar system from extraterrestrial threats. Sounds a lot like some other shows that involve battling extraterrestrial forces, but who am I to judge? Now, Colonel Bleep was mostly seen in a transparent bubble for his helmet, with a helicopter-like propeller and two antennae. The propeller, used in conjunction with Bleep's ever-present unicycle, helped to propel the creature through space. The antenna shot beams of photonic energy, which is a portmanteau of future and atomic, which can manifest itself in a number of ways, most commonly as a ray gun. The amount of photonic energy that Colonel Bleep could absorb at any given moment was finite. I believe that's it, or infinite. But in several episodes he would run out of energy and become vulnerable. But that's a whole different story that there's not enough time in this video for me to explain, so let's move on. Mostly, it drew plenty of influence from the space age of its time. I think mostly because of the decade it was made in, 1957 and 1960, which was when the show aired on television. Of course, the actual science was grossly fictionized and frequently used anachronisms anachronisms. For instance, Scratch, before his long sleep, showed he had a pet dinosaur, even though dinosaurs died millions of years before the cavemen appeared. However, there were moments when actual scientific topics are discussed. Like, for example, a discussion on the moon giving an accurate overview of various thin current theories for the moon's heavily cratered appearance. But again, science explanation, long story, no time for full explanation in this video. How the show was made. The animation in the show, much like Rough and Ready, was extremely limited, as was typical of TV animation during this era. Local newscaster Noah Tyler was the narrator for the show, and he provided virtually all the vocal characterizations. And most of the characters were mute, much like Dopey and Gideon from Snow White and Pinocchio, respectively. Jack Slay, or Skle, whatever his name is, directed all the episodes. And the design of the series, like I mentioned, was influenced by the futuristic designs of the 1950s and early 1960s. Meaning what I'm saying is that cars had huge tail fins, boomerangs were frequently incorporated into signs and architecture, and atom symbols were used as frequently as possible. Now, in 1965, Shell and Buchanan actually produced a series of syndicated physical fitness cartoons for children through Sundak called The Mighty Mr. Titan. Although Colonel Bleep is generally well regarded today, Mighty Mr. Titan, not so much. Which is probably the reason why, if you ask somebody who grew up in the 50s and 60s, do you remember Colonel Bleep? And they'll say yes. Do you remember Mighty Mr. Titan? They'll say, who? Contemporary animated television shorts of the era, most of which were preserved, practically no original material from Colonel Bleep, no material whatsoever is known to exist today. In the early 70s, while Jack Shell was closing Soundak and moving the company's materials to a van, car thieves stole the van, and its contents never turned up. So basically, there's no way any of you, not even I, can watch Colonel Bleep. Basically meaning that he's stuck in wasteland for all eternity. So, that was basically Colonel Bleep. Too bad there are actually no material that's known to exist today. If there was, it might be a rare once-in-a-millennium sort of thing to find. But regardless, thanks so much for joining me, and I'm very, very pleased that you've been showing support for most of my videos. Keep up the support, leave a like, subscribe if you want to, and I'll see you all next time for another installment of Animation History Tour. But before we go, a word from our sponsor. Noises in the middle of the night? Do you experience a feeling of dread in your basement or attic? Actually seeing a spook, specter, or even a ghost like this guy? Don't wait one more minute. Just pick up your phone and call the professionals. Call the Ghostbusters. Our team is on call 24/7 to serve all of your supernatural elimination needs. Ghostbusters, we're ready to believe you. Call today.